Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you might see a link, and you can click on that link, and you'll end up in Zoom. Then you'll see another link, and you click on that, and you can end up in Makana. And in Makana, you'll become one of our producers. You'll actually drive the show. We don't really have a run of show. We don't have a plan. Our plan is that you'll ask questions, and we'll talk about them. I used to say we'd answer them, but we'll just do the best we can. Now, if you think you can answer some of those questions, if you think you have something to add to the community here, you can come as early as 6 to just check out your kit, make sure that everything's working. Check to make your audio and video is just right. But you need to be here by 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's when we do the mic checks. At 7 o'clock, we start general questions. That is pretty much anything you want to ask about media and virtual production. Sometimes how do you use a USB hub? All kinds of things. Anything's game in that realm. So come and ask those questions. The best time to ask those questions is really while we're doing the mic check. So get here a little early, ask the questions, and make sure to vote on the questions. We spend a little bit more time on the front half of the hour than the second half, and really why we spend more time on those is because those are the most popular questions. And so it's really important that you actually vote on them. Second hour is something that, a person or a subject that we think we'd like to spend a little more time on. Today, we've got John Barker here. You can see John is here in the panel. And John is known for a lot of things. Here to Record is one of the things that a lot of us have been watching for quite some time now. And he's also a developer of cool tools. And so he's going to be talking about his, how he got here and what he's working on, and answer your questions. So if you have questions for John, make sure to tag those for second hour, and you can do that in Mukana. So make sure to do that. And then tomorrow we're going to talk about anaglyphs. I know it seems like didn't we leave this in the 50s? But they're really fun. I think that I started shooting. I built a little rig. I'll show you guys tomorrow. That very, very rough looking rig to shoot actually stereo pairs, both stills and video with my iPhones. So I'll show that and show some of the results, and then we'll look back in time at stuff that's been done. People have been doing this for 100 years, and so it's just kind of a fun thing. So if you got, I warned you. I sent links out for weeks, so hopefully some of you have some red blue glasses, and you'll be able to actually view them over that. So we'll have like a little anaglyph theater tomorrow and Thursday. Friday, we're going to talk about networking. A lot of us have questions about it. So if you've got networking questions, I heard this morning we were talking about the difference between 1 gig and 10 gig connections and all that, but also IP and VPNs. If you have questions about that, Friday is the day to come with those questions, and we'll talk about them. Saturday is the long day, of course. So we have our standard Q&A. Then we have 2 hours of it for education. We'll talk to educators about, and a lot of stuff's brewing there right now. So if you're an educator, we'd love to have you there. 10 o'clock, we're going to have Nick Justishin talk about, we're working with Unreal Engine. Nick Justishin from Drexel University. And our challenge is to bring a metahuman into Unreal and apply facial capture, through the phone. And so we're going to talk about how to do that. We're challenging all of you to go ahead and give that a shot and see what you can do before Saturday, and come with questions. At 11 o'clock, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to do a test cooking. We'll put that out tomorrow. There is, so we've got a test cooking at 11. We won't start cooking until 11:30. So you've got a solid half an hour after Nick's hour to kind of get set up. But it's kind of an informal cooking that we'll do then. And then in the evening, we have Mad in the Kitchen. And Mad in the Kitchen, the comms open at 3. So you can come in and listen to us setting up and getting ready to go. Nate is going to be back. So for those of you who listen to Nate, Nate's one of my top TDs that I work with here. And so Nate Hill is going to be calling the show from Salt Lake City. So listening to Nate call a show is useful, like if you're trying to get into this. And so it's a great way to learn, just a lot of how these live shows go. So Nate will be calling the show. And then after the show, we stop, and you can actually you'll see the multi-views, and you'll listen to Nate call the show. You can actually watch the cooking part too, if you want. And then at the end, we'll stop and talk about what we did and why we did it. So it's a pretty great educational little couple hours. So stay tuned for that. All right, Bill, let's jump into the questions.
Absolutely. Our first one, the most highly rated question today, comes from Michael O'Hara in Hallsville, Texas. And he says, what would the single biggest recommendation be that can be made to improve a home office for video conferencing?
Go ahead, Charles.
I would tend to follow the rules of cinema and photography, and the most basic one is contrast to keep your skin tone lighter than the background, right? Because your eye tends to follow what is lightest. That's how we are naturally made. And the second rule would be, since your skin tone is naturally warm, keep the background a little cooler, and you will start to create that separation, which is why you see a lot of movies have that warm teal look. They try to separate the main characters from the background so you could follow the story of what they're saying.
Go ahead, Ken, and then Bill.
Yeah, similar to what Charles was saying, but investment in lighting is a good way of making a average camera look really good. So spending on some good lighting, a good way.
Go ahead, Bill.
Good suggestions. I do think that sound is probably the single that carries most of the information in this kind of I'm talking to you circumstance. So anything you can do to either treat your room, if you can do that, or if you can't, get a microphone that's really close to your mouth, like a headset mic, will improve your signal to noise ratio, make it easier for people to hear what you're saying. And that does the bulk of the heavy lifting in communications in this format.
Go ahead, Chris.
We typically record people that are going to do no technology improvements, none. That's just the way it is. And one of the things that I've started to notice is their orientation to the wall that is behind them alludes to what is in front of them. And I've been noticing a lot of people like in small dining rooms where they're flat against a wall. And I've been actually encouraging people to turn just a few degrees, 20 degrees off, so that I'm not getting the echo from the wall that's more than likely in front of them also in a small dining room. So, and then if you're not going to actually light it, at least control the light that you do have so it's not changing on us.
Go ahead, John.
I would say from a practical point of view, make it something that you can, in my case, I always have to set this stuff up every day because of the size of my house. But the easier you make it to set this stuff up every time, especially when you invest in a lot of gear, the better it will be. Because next week you might just say, you know what, never mind, I don't want to set all that up again. So I'm building a box to make it easier every single time to do that.
I took over a room and just said, that's going to be the room that I'm going to do it in. Like it's not, and it had to be that process, because right now I can just sit down and turn it on. And that was a key piece of it. And I would have put it in my garage if I didn't have a room, but I would have done something where I can just walk in and turn it on, because I do it so much, and I want it to look and sound a certain way. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. If you can just have a dedicated space that you don't have to tear down and set up. And I would highly recommend just having one good flat wall, not a backdrop. If you can,
or what
a wall.
You'll see some of us have put backgrounds behind. I don't have anything in this room that I have. It's not a perfect room for this kind of thing. I have a big window that would make me look like a silhouette, and it wouldn't. There's nothing out there to really look at, and so I put a big screen up. First it had a green screen. Now I just have a gray screen, but you can do that to make that work. The ranking that we usually have when we're trying to fix somebody, we've worked with thousands of people and we send out kits for most of them now, but the ranking is internet, then audio, then lighting, then camera, then background. I mean, that's how we go through what we're trying to do. We want to make sure they have a wired connection. That's the first thing, so they're not constantly stalling. Then the audio, and that could be $30 or $3,000, just depends on what we're doing. And then lighting, because as Ken said, that lighting will make an average camera look really good. And then the camera, and I do, someone was talking to me about how to build a better presentation last week. And I said, well, the first thing you need to do is get your cameras working and your audio working. It literally, you don't need slides. If you can get your audio and video and your cameras, you can just talk, because you will look so much bigger than everyone else. I mean, I can tell you as someone who's spent a little bit of time on my camera and my lighting and everything else, that it makes a difference when you're in meetings. If you're pitching, if you're trying to lead, if you're trying to do all those things, you need to know that you're at a disadvantage. For those of you who dressed for the role or did everything else before in the business world, you are making and breaking your meetings by how you look and how you sound on Zoom. So you just always have to keep that in mind. Go ahead, Courtney.
The one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is in-ear monitors or headphones, because if you have an open speaker, you're going to change the order of way things are heard in the whole meeting.
Yep. And I highly recommend some version of an in-ear monitor. Next question.
Perry Miller of Chapel Hill, North Carolina says, Alex's image in the hotel room yesterday appeared studio quality. How was he able to achieve this quality of streaming while only using his travel kit?
Well, my travel kit was a 1650. I was driving, and so I just threw a 1650 into the car. So I can't say that it was it wasn't what I fit into a carry-on. But so I had a Nanlite. I thought it was a 68, but it was actually a Nanlite 100. 100B is what I had. I just grabbed one that was in my office, and so I had that. And then I had a Brio. It actually looked better in the pre-show because I was testing the pre-show and I had the 6K up. There was some height issues with the tripod that I was using, so I chose not to use it for the show. But that was just a Brio. And then, of course, it was the USB pre and everything else. And so it wasn't that much. The biggest thing was the light, because lighting makes a big difference. It's very hard to make a hotel look good without a light because all their lights kind of aren't very great. It was kind of nice to have the lights in the background, though, from the hotel. And one thing is that, of course, we've now in the company, I'm not going to tell you what the number is, but we've decided which hotel room we need to request if I go down. I go down to the same place all the time. And I've been slowly going from one room to another. And I was like, oh, I found it. And what I was looking for is a lot of distance between me and the back wall. If you'll notice that every other time I was in that hotel, the wall was right behind me. And that's just where they oriented the desk. And so I think that when I got really excited about the fact that I got a hotel room that worked, I was like, hotels are going to have to start thinking about this. Like, they have to start thinking about what it takes to video conference from their location. It can't just be, oh, this is how it's going to look when you walk in. Because as a user, I don't care. Like, I don't care what it looks like. All I care about is what's behind me, and that my desk isn't oriented to have my bed behind me, or a wall, or something else. Or I do want a wall, and I don't want anything else. But the point is that I'm almost now thinking about hotels based on what's behind me. Go ahead, Chris, and then Courtney, and then Chris.
Now, did you wait for a perfect room, or did you move stuff around?
It's hard. Those tables are hard to move, and I didn't bring in my own table. The thought has crossed my mind, but then you look really funny when you load in to your own hotel room with your own table, folding table. But so I've been kind of just living with where the tables are. But now that I found one, I'll try to get that room on any floor. I'm going to guess that the floor structure is the same. Go ahead, Courtney, and then Chris.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that if you were working off the end of the table, because in most of those rooms, and I know what they look like, the table faces out the window rather than
this one didn't.
That
was the key. Is like this one was like, ooh, look at this. So
I wondered if you rotated the table or not.
We have in other, like I don't know where I don't think I have the records anymore, but we knew like which rooms we wanted in certain hotels in New York, and in there are certain rooms in. I know that there's a Four Seasons in Beverly Hills that we knew like six different rooms that we wanted to use, because that's where he brought a lot of actors. You kind of keep track of that because it is kind of random. But I think that those are the things that, as hotels think about how to get people back into them over time, when people go traveling and they go to a hotel and all their video conference stuff looks bad, that's going to affect how they think about travel. Like, and whether they want to go out or not, because a lot of people now are in video meetings 4 or 5 hours a day. And when they travel, it doesn't mean it's going to go away. Next question.
Rupert McCrae here in the panel from Dallas, Texas says, Zoom has a documented way of joining multiple meetings simultaneously. You need at least a business account, and the feature needs to be enabled by support. You cannot host multiple meetings, but you can join them. Any experiences? And did I miss the memo about this? He asks. He has a link there.
I've done it by accident. So if I jump into another Zoom meeting really quickly, I suddenly realize this meeting didn't end. But I think that if you hand off host, you can actually. It doesn't even have to be the creator. I believe that if you hand off the host, you can jump into another meeting that you are hosting. Go ahead, Guy.
It's kind of crazy to do it. We have enabled it on our account, and what happens is you hear the volume full bore of both meetings. So when you're in it, it's like saturation of voices coming at you. So I've done it. Basically, like if I'm in this meeting, I launch the meeting. It's just like normal. But then if I click on a link in an email to launch another meeting, it just opens up another Zoom. And if I try to adjust the volume, it adjusts the volume for both. So then, you know, if you're trying to
I
pay
wonder if you
attention
could
to-
use, I wonder if you could use loopback, like, and get the output from each one.
It's still just Zoom. It's one instance. So Jonas might know more. He's on my account, so he
Jonas?
If you have multiple virtual audio cables, you can route manually all the different Zoom clients. I have an upcoming project where I will open a lot of Zoom meetings and monitor them via virtual audio cables. So that is a possibility, but yeah, it is a lot. I was 3 meetings was the max, and then it's just, you don't get anything. It's just attendance at this point.
Next question.
Moving on, James Babbitt in San Diego says, on Twitter, James Burke discusses a new Connections series about, quote, this is what the future is going to be, close quote. Could Office Hours have a second hour about James Burke discussing this new series? James Burke is an educator in Office Hours as a 24/7 global conversation. You should check this guy out, Alex.
Who's this James Burke guy, and why? I don't understand. I mean, no. So James Burke, for those of you listening who haven't heard me talk about James Burke, is kind of the core of everything I think about when I think about education. So I watched Connections when I was, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, and I still watch it. I probably watch it once a year, and so it's available. If you go to Internet Archive, you can find a low resolution version of what he did in the 70s. That's one of the great shots in the 70s. But James Burke still built the best training ever in the 70s, and no one has gotten to it yet. And I even posted that I thought that I wanted ILM and Alton Brown to team up and do a new Connections. And I tweeted that out, and Alton Brown responded and said, I just watched Connections when I was planning Good Eats. Like, I was just binging on Connections when I was planning Good Eats. So it wasn't, and then I guess Mike Rowe. So now I kind of feel like what we need to do is get Alton Brown. Mike Rowe's now got a show that is obviously based on Connections as well. So I think that we should get Mike Rowe, Alton Brown, and James Burke all together and have them do a show where they're doing different segments and throwing it back and forth.
They would cancel each other out.
I don't think so. I think that you could. I think you could have them doing different sections. They have different things, and I think that it would be.
There you go.
It would be so much interwoven stuff, and it would be my 3 favorite people to watch talk about things, like talk about technical things. Or those are probably my 3 favorites. And so, if you look at how I do training, you can see Alton Brown, Mike Rowe, and James Burke are the 3 that will just be wound with. Go ahead, Sky.
Just I raised my hand. The question would be the type A personalities. When you put both in the same room, it's the sequencing of things. I'm just observing again. David.
Well,
Letterman
I think that
David Letterman and Graham Kerr, they put them on front of a camera. It was 2 different people trying to be in charge at the same time.
Yeah,
so
but I think that. I think that Mike Rowe and
love
and
the
Alton
idea
Brown,
though. Love Mike Rowe.
Mike Rowe and Alton Brown, I think, know that they're derivative of James Burke. So anyway, I would love to have that. I've put out some feelers already to James Burke's people. The worst part was I used to have his email because I was working on something with him in like 15 years ago. I just can't find the email. So I used to talk, I had a couple conversations with him about his K-Web, which is this idea of everything being connected and understanding how knowledge is connected. It was genius. And so that was like in 2004 or 5. So anyway, I'm a massive fan, and we would love to have him on. So if anyone knows anybody here, I have pinged some of his folks about him coming on. Haven't gotten a lot of response yet, but maybe now that there's a Twitter push, we'll see something. But by the way, your homework, if you care to, we might even do watch parties or something of Connections, because it's just amazingly well written. And remember, it was the biggest, it was the highest, biggest budget that the BBC and PBS had done in this at that moment. Like it wasn't like they didn't know it was going to be a big deal. Anyway, so but you can watch it on Internet Archive. You can download low-res versions. My kids will watch that over everything else. If I turn it on, they'll just stop and come over and watch. It's 40 years old. It's worth, as a media person, it's worth at least seeing it if you haven't seen it. Next question.
Charles Silverman in Ridgefield says, tried putting an Atomos recorder between the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K and ATEM Mini, but lost the ability to control the camera. Does the ATEM strictly require a direct connection for camera control? And if so, is there a workaround?
They're basically cheating to get it all to work. You know, like HDMI is not designed to send control signals upstream. I believe that they're using the HDCP, the security protocol to get to get over TV. I'm curious. Another test for you to do would be to plug your Atomos into your Apple TV and see if your Apple TV movies show up on your Atomos, or on something downstream from it. Because if the ATEM can't talk to the camera, it means it's handshaking with the HDCP, but not passing it through. So just something to think about. Victor, and then Ken, and then Courtney.
I wonder if Guy can test if it will work if you're using an ATEM, a Blackmagic monitor, not the Atomos. I wonder if then it would work because it's proprietary in nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead, Ken, and then Courtney.
I can answer that because that's what I was just testing, and no, it doesn't work.
Courtney?
There is built into the HDMI spec is a control signal to control so that your components in your stereo can be controlled over HDMI. So it's a separate digital control channel, and that's probably what they're using, not HDCP.
Right. It's good. It's good. Good point. Guy?
Yeah, the way around, well, it's not really around, throwing money at it, but is to get an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO and then take your aux out, and so you have two HDMI. So that's what we're gonna do. So because basically I needed a monitor, so I'm gonna feed my camera back to the Atomos, but direct connection as camera 3, I think it is on Sky's switcher. Well, it's my switcher. I'm letting him borrow it for the show. So enjoy. We'll test it.
Awesome. Next question.
Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas says, do some paid Zoom accounts at the same licensing level have different features depending on when, how, or in what region the account is established, other than the 1080p bit flip and other advertised add-ons?
I wouldn't be surprised if there was limitations based on country in a handful of countries. There's some countries with some fairly restrictive laws that there may be some additional feature, or not, I would say not additional features, but additional restrictions. I can't think of anything else that would be regional. Does anyone know of anything else, or can think of anything else like that? I don't think so. I think that's it. I mean, there's things you can request to have on your account, but I don't think what region you're in is what's affecting it. What does affect it is like the 1080p bit flip is not just whether you can have it, but is a preponderance of your users able to actually receive it. Next question.
Dan H., Erie, Pennsylvania, and I'm hoping I get this right. Does host of an office hours webinar the host of an office hours webinar arrange gallery view before selecting follow host view? And I guess, will that hold?
I think we tested it, and the host changing the gallery view doesn't seem to change anybody's position. The host chooses between gallery and spotlight and host and speaker view, but they don't choose the orientation, which I think is unfortunate. I think it'd be nice to do that.
Yeah, I think arrange is always local to the viewer.
Yeah. Next question.
Jose Manigua, looks like Sacramento. Is there a way you can have 5 live streams, 5 different camera feeds going to one YouTube account at the same time? This is for a university graduation where the viewer will have 5 feeds to choose from.
Go ahead, Jonas.
You can't anymore the cool feature they had where you could switch the camera in the feed, but you can have 5 different live events. Important is that you create a live event and then create 5 different stream keys, and then it just works. We do that all the time.
Yeah, and one of the ways to make that really work for the kind of environment that you're talking about is to create a web page and embed those, so that if you do it with YouTube, they have to jump from one event to another event to another event on YouTube. But if you embed them into a web page, then it's just easier for them to get to, and they can even turn them all on if they have enough bandwidth. Go ahead, Jonas.
If you want to embed, keep in mind that only old account or new accounts which have enabled AdSense or AdWords, I don't know which one of those, can enable live videos. If you can enable a normal video, you can't enable a live video. It's different. You can't embed live streams if you not have 10,000 subscribers or have an old account. So for example, I have old accounts that I hold just because of that, because I can still embed live streams. New account can't embed from the start. They need some specific thing.
Interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Jonas, can you define what new and old account means?
I'm not sure.
My guess is
old enough that I had the partner program without having X amount of subscriber.
Like 2003? Is that old?
No. It's it's probably. And you would have had to activate the live stream, but I think it's been 5 years back. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, actually, in December of last year, they took a lot of accounts off. You have to have 1,000 subscribers. It doesn't matter how old the account is. Got to have 1,000
to embed. I think the embedding is higher than that. I thought the embedding was higher.
To actually live stream as well.
Well, to live stream, it's 1,000, but when it started as 1,000, so live stream went from. It started as you needed 1,000 people, then it went down to nothing, and then it went back up.
I had test accounts. I had test accounts that have been around for years, and as of December, they got cut off as well. So
interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Jonas.
We can still do that on our accounts. So 1,000 is only relevant for the mobile streaming, and we are talking about embedding, not streaming.
Right. And a lot of this has to do with the ability to control people doing things they shouldn't do. They just don't want them to light up a live account and then do stream things that they shouldn't stream. And that's where a lot of that comes from. Next question.
Diogo Nuncia of Barcelona, Spain is in next. This one's interesting. In an effort to learn the app diagrams.net, I've been drawing Matt in the Kitchen's signal flow diagrams. Can Alex expand on what gear is connected to the Dell PC in 090 Studios? I recall Audio I/O is strictly DVS, but what's the video path? Capture cards, proc amps, routers, switcher, converters, and so forth. And he's going to keep posting his progress in Discord.
Wow. Yeah, so the it's a Blackmagic card, either a Blackmagic Duo or 8K. That's the video out. Video in. No, I'm sorry, that's video in. Video out is just there's two HDMI outs of the computer that we're converting to SDI immediately. So we convert them with the HDMI to SDI. We don't use anything like a decimator because it increases the latency. So that's how we're getting the videos out of it. Those go into, of course, a 40x40 router. There's a lot of routing and patching that I'm going to ignore right now because it would be very complicated to explain. They do go through an FS HDR. There's two FS HDRs, and all the signals go through those. And those allow me to do color correction as well as sync if I wanted to as they go through. And I could convert it to HDR if I wanted. So not that I don't think it would look that good because it's Zoom, but you can. And then from there, essentially, they go to, after that, they go to an ATEM switcher, Constellation. And from the Constellation, the program, some of the programs go to Hyperdecks. So we have the ability to record ISOs. We don't record all the ISOs right now, but we have, we can record the ISOs on Hyperdecks. I think we have, 10 in line or something like that. And then playback goes from another set of Hyperdecks into the Constellation, and then it goes out to Elemental links, which then the Elemental links stream to AWS, and from AWS we stream to YouTube. So I'm just going to list it all off there. We'll see how you do. All right, next question.
Chris Ward in Berlin says, how do glasses wearers keep light and other reflections out of the lenses?
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, it's just all about the angle of the light. And it's basically I've got mine angled down so that the reflections don't come in. I've got a mistake I've made today, though, is even though the angle for the light is perfect for the glasses, so if you look up, you can see the light there. I've got reflective stuff on my desk, which then bounces back up into the glasses. So it's just really about angling the light to stop the reflection.
Go ahead, Courtney.
And if you're talking about the monitors, we talked about earlier, is a polarizing filter will kill the reflection in your glasses of any LCD monitors that you have in front of them, because they have a built-in polarizer, linear polarizer built into all LCD screens. So you can just dial out the reflection in glasses of the screens. Doesn't work for the lights unless you put a polarizing filter in front of the light, though.
Which I did. so I have so angle as Ken said, angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. So it coming down, you want it to go down below. You want it to reflect that angle out below the camera. So if I turn up, you'll still see some lights there, but a lot of it has been removed because I have a polarizing filter on my camera and I have a polarizing film on my main key. And you do lose a couple stops when you put it on, but then you rotate the filter, and then there's a lot of highlights that just go away, not only in my glasses but in my skin. So I'm less shiny. So those things. So you have to kind of adjust for that as well. But that's kind of like the next step. I hadn't thought about it. I think Courtney had started talking about it, and then I started playing with it, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. So we're playing with it more, but you can definitely reduce a lot of incidental highlights with that. Go ahead, Bill.
And you can't do it for other people, but for yourself, when you order glasses, inquire into their anti-reflective coating. There is a thing they can do at the optical shop that will help spread that out and make it less overt.
Next question.
John Pruitt of Huntersville here in the panel often says, yesterday I got very hoarse. What tips do you have for dealing with this?
Tea. So I prefer PG tips. Anyway, so, tea. Go ahead, Sky, and then Mickey.
The old theater trick is honey and lemon in the tea, and hot or just straight up hot water. Yeah, so it smooths and coats and relaxes your voice muscles.
Yeah, Mickey.
Yeah, tea as well, but specifically ginger tea.
Oh, there you go. Very good. Go ahead, Bill.
Also, remember, your voice is created by muscles. You get stressed, you push, you're going to wear on your voice. If you talk for long periods of time without a break, you're going to wear on your voice. Sometimes you just have to realize that if you're speaking a lot, you're like an athlete who's doing anything a lot. You have to build up to it slowly, practice.
Charles?
I would also consider if you had a lot of sodium-rich foods before, that will dry you out. And I learned that from some opera singers. They will try to avoid sodium about 24 hours before they have to perform, just so that doesn't happen.
Yeah. JJ and then Courtney.
Specifically throat coat. It's got slippery elm in it. It's the one tea that has this in it. So traditional medicinals, you can get those anywhere on Amazon.
Courtney?
Sleep with your mouth closed. This is something my ENT told me just yesterday, because
you do that though. How do you know?
Clear your throat quite a bit.
Put a belt around your head.
Yeah, put a belt around your head, like a little
CPAP machine. Yeah, something like that.
Go ahead, Mickey.
And also avoid drinking dairy or having dairy products when you have a sore throat.
Yeah, there was a time when I had to be operational a lot, and if I had a problem with it, we would literally gargle lemon juice. It would be amazing how quickly you could go from one singing event and go into another one and you'd be like, oh, I can't do this again. And then you'd be able to do it again. But I wouldn't do that very often. Next question.
Matt Cool, Montreal, is back, and he says, we're looking for an all-in-one streaming platform that can send personalized invites, send reminder emails, embed the stream, has moderated Q&A and chat, and has killer analytics. Anyone knows such a platform? And he wonders if Mukana, as yet unreleased, can do all that.
It can. It's not in the version you guys use. So it can do all those things. It's just that we do in customized events, we build it. It's because it's just a web design for us to do that. I don't know if we've done the reminder emails, but it's just for us, it would just be adding a service to that process. But it's just a costly setup. It's not something you just subscribe to for $100 a month. So we build custom versions of Mukana for a variety of shows. So it will do it, and you can contact me on Discord to talk about pricing and the restrictions and timing and everything else. We do use it relatively often now. It's probably used a couple times a month for different. Again, these are mostly white glove private events that we use it for. So it's getting closer to the surface. as we start to make it more available to external clients. But eventually, my goal is, of course, it to be relatively inexpensive and easy to use. It's just not there yet. We're still working on the fine bits. When you hand it off to users to self-run it, as any program will tell you, is the level of complexity goes up exponentially. Based on, like, when we just have to build it for you and it just works, and when it doesn't work, we just add some more code and we just do whatever. That's easy. Putting the buttons in and making sure that you don't fall off the rails is much, much harder. So there's a huge jump, which we haven't made yet, but we're working on it. Next question.
Dave Oden in Johnstown, Colorado is here next with, is there a way to get a live 4K video feed from the Blackmagic Pocket 4K camera, not a recording?
Charles?
Unfortunately, it's only HDMI out and it's only 1080. Not that I'm angry about it in the 6K as well. But yeah, we tried to figure out ways to get a high resolution just as we were trying to fine tune focus on a large monitor. But yeah, it's designed just to put out HDMI 1080p.
6K as well. Both of them put out a 1080p signal, and even the 12K puts out a 4K signal. None of them can't even get all the data out of that. By the way, if people are looking for sample files for 12Ks, let me know. I'll have one soon to play with for a little while. Jonas?
Does even the 6K Pro only output HD?
Yeah.
Oh,
Same
that's
thing.
sad.
Yeah. Next question.
Aaron Giancarla in Flagstaff, Arizona said, lost an audio channel when my main Mac computer crashed in a Zoom show. Second computer became host, which was running Zoom OSC and streaming to YouTube. When the crash happened, we lost the right channel audio on YouTube. Any idea why?
Mickey?
It's hard to tell without a diagram, so perhaps you'd want to post that in Discord and people can break it down.
Jonas?
Could it be that only the host that crashed had stereo enabled, and when it crashed and left the meeting, that Zoom get confused because nobody has stereo on anymore, and then collapse it again to one channel, but YouTube was like, hey, I have to, I'll just put it here for now. That's my guess.
Or that there's some kind of a stereo channel on the second one, or some kind of, it does sound like one or both accounts had stereo turned on. So there's something in the stereo processing that caused that. I agree with Jonas there. Now, next question.
Mark Horner in Seattle, Washington's next. And he tried Filmic Pro as a webcam. Looked great, but it overheats and the phone shuts down in emergency mode after about 20 minutes. With the power plugged in, no recording, 1080p, no log. Tried without power too, still overheats. iPhone 7. Is Filmic Pro really a viable solution for a webcam in a live stream?
Now, I haven't used it on the 7. On the 12s, I've run it for hours. So it's not. I think the 7 may be asking a lot of the 7 to do what it's doing, that it doesn't require the same level of effort. But I've left it on for 2 or 3 hours. On the 12, it does get warm, but it hasn't stopped. Go ahead, Sky, and then Jeffrey.
Yes, concur. As I've used it on the set as a overhead camera, and but it is on a 12 Pro, not a 7.
Yep. Both, and mine were 12 Pros as well. Jeffrey.
I have a 7 right here. It's actually a 7 Plus, and I've used it for somewhere between 30 minutes to an hour. And I've not had that problem. So if it's a 7, that might be one thing, but the 7 Plus, it works fine.
You can always glue a bunch of heat sinks on the back, or water cool it. Go ahead, Mark.
I have the 7. I have a 7 Plus, and I've got the 12 Pro Max. So I'm excited to experiment more. I also, for the first time, used the Filmic Remote app on my iPad. Purchased that for about $9 or $10, and it was really cool to see all the features that are in that and help me adjust that camera. But thank you for the feedback. That's really good. I was just wondering if there's something inherent about using a camera, pushing it in a phone environment where maybe we don't have the proper cooling or something for all that processing power, that maybe it's not viable for an hour-long show. but you've given me hope, so thank you.
Yeah. Go. I would test it with the newer cameras. Go ahead, Bill, and then Mickey.
I wonder if, because they have better power management diagnostics now, I'm wondering if those old phones, maybe the battery is just aged and it isn't putting out enough current and it's getting overheated because of that.
Yeah. Possibly, Mickey.
Yeah, I was about to mention the same thing. An aging battery might work unreliably when you're drawing a lot of current from it.
Jeffrey, real quick.
Take off any cases and not use as much cage as possible. That's the only other thing I can think of.
Next question.
Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota. What are the requirements for gear to be controlled by Streamdeck or Companion? And what's the main difference in the two?
Jonas?
There isn't really one protocol that is used. How it works is there are plugins on both platforms that can be used to control gear. But there are generic ones for Companion at least. So if it's controllable over HTTP, for example, or OSC, it can be used. You would need to look at the specific render that creates that thing. And the difference between Streamdeck and Companion is like another software that uses the Streamdeck to display its buttons, which is much more network-based. And the Streamdeck is the native application from Elgato. And in my experience, the Streamdeck has a lot more stuff that you can do on the machine. But as soon as you want to venture out into the network, I found Companion has more options. And there is a list of what's available on Companion.
Perfect. Next question.
TJ Asher in Minneapolis says, is it possible to get a dedicated man in the kitchen comms breakout room that's just the comms without any commentary from anyone else? I think it's fun to discuss the show as it happens, but some folks may want to really focus on the comms, especially with Nate calling the show.
You didn't like it when I was not calling the show? We should be able to do that. I think we just need an extra computer. We should put that in. Someone has to just ping Kevin Hansen, and I think we should be able to make that work. Mickey and then Sky.
Yeah, we have a specific number of machines that are available for us to utilize in the show, and every week the number of machines that's utilized for actually creating the show itself fluctuates. So we only really find out if we have any spare machines during the rehearsals.
Right. Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
I'm looking forward to Guy's AWS solution, and we just add another machine. But to my question was, will we be using Makana this week so that people can interact with Marisa?
Yeah, we'll get that out tomorrow.
Awesome, because she's ready to interact and take in all the questions and stuff and bring them into the conversation. That's brilliant. Thank you.
It's
also very pink. It's also very pink. It's very cool.
If you're in Makana right now and you hit MITK, you'll see what it looks like for Bad.
And the icons change. It's awesome.
Everything changes. So anyway, all right, next question.
Gabriele Losurdo in Milan, Italy. Next, what software would you use to create animations of the planned movements of the talents on stage and the cameras around the stage? I did an initial experiment with Illustrator Motion, which you can see here as a link there.
I think Motion works well. I mean, I think that if I was doing it, oh yeah. So I see. Interesting. I mean, I think that I would. Where I'm trying to go is to use Unreal Engine for that. Because now that you have MetaHuman, you can literally just generate a bunch of people that look kind of like the people that you're going to use, throw them in there, and then do all the animations that you had there inside of Unreal and play it out. But the cool thing is that you can play out a bunch of different cameras all at the same time. So you could have that overhead that you're showing there of everyone moving around, but you could also have a live camera following them of what the camera is going to do. And you could have both of them just showing up as players in real time. And if someone wants to stop and edit it or whatever, you can just stop and edit it and move it around. So, we've been doing 3D previs for the last 10 years. Just Unreal has made it a lot easier to do a lot of those things. And so, and you could even, at this point, throw trackers on or just use your phone to have the people actually say what they're going to say in 3D. So it would be, all that stuff is coming together. We're not there yet as far as our own skill set, but we will be there in the next couple months. I mean, we're working really hard in Unreal right now, so that's like my life for the next 2 or 3 months. Bill?
It's too bad Talak isn't here, because in theater, that the motion of actors is called blocking, and I would imagine that theater has developed some programs to do blocking and reproduce it. So you might want to look under that term, do a search, and see if you can find something.
Theater has, but I nowadays, like, remember, if you're using a game engine, you can actually have walking cycles and basic, you could build a lot of things into a previs for that type of thing that would be easy. Real Illusion also does, has a lot of previs. There are a lot of software designed for previs. So those are there. I've never seen theater. I mean, Talak would let us know, but I haven't seen theater do it at that level yet. I mean, I've definitely seen them block it, but there's no reason why you can't block it with a fair bit of detail at this point. Next question.
Mark Horner, Seattle, Washington. Where does Wi-Fi rank when considering features for choosing a hotel?
It's the number one feature I use to choose a hotel. Like, it is the feature that I choose for. I mean, the only thing that I would choose above good Wi-Fi is Ethernet. And I literally, have trouble finding them. But if hotels put Ethernet back in, they could literally give me a, single, like a single bed and no, like, they give me practically boxes, like just made out of raw wood. And I would stay there if I had an Ethernet connection. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I agree on that wholeheartedly. I love it when I find an Ethernet connection. The other thing is, I carry this with me. This is the Slate by GLNet. This will hook up to the Wi-Fi and actually replicate my own Wi-Fi off of it. And if I can use this in a situation, then I love the hotel for that. But if they block it, then it doesn't do me any good.
If you guys ask me in a pre-show about a funny story about how I got a 5-star hotel in Italy to add Ethernet to my room, I'll tell you it, but I'm not going to tell it during the show. Go ahead, Bill, and then Mickey.
I just wonder, a survey of how many hotels have an Ethernet port, usually on the base of the lamp, that is not connected to anything these days, because they used to have that all over the place. And when Wi-Fi came in, they deprecated them. That's terrible.
when they think you're the head coach for a huge soccer team, they'll build it right into the wall. Go ahead, Mickey, and then JJ.
Yeah, I like to carry around an Amplify and send the little smaller version amplified. You could extend both Ethernet, or you could also use it as a Wi-Fi repeater.
Yeah, go ahead, JJ.
Some places you'll also find one at the back of a television. Very often, now those televisions usually are mounted kind of close to the walls, but the back of the TV will usually have a Ethernet jack on the back of that. Bring a switch, plug it in, blow out their span entry protocols, but you'll also probably have something on different VLAN. Might not have internet, but it's a good place to check.
TVs are also a good place to find a plug if you need to localize your plug if you're in some country. The first place I look if I don't have a power plug, I look at what the TV is, whether it's a figure 8 or whatever, and put it into my power, because it's the easiest way to find that plug if you don't have one, because I don't ever use the TV. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, but be careful if you're going to do that, because a lot of the time they use the Ethernet plug for theft detection protocol, and if you unplug it, it's like they arrive and goes, okay, where'd you put the TV?
Next question.
Alex 40 Goldner, our friend in London, England, says, will the new iPad Pro be more powerful than the Atomos Ninja V Plus?
We don't know. We have no idea what's going to happen there, Charles.
I'm leaning towards yes from the specs that I'm seeing on B&H. I looked at it the other day. I was like, oh, that's going to be cool. And then I looked. So its color gamut is actually just 709. The iPad is going to be P3 plus. It is going to do 1,000 nits, but it's going to do 1,000 nits on 709. So it's just going to stretch that out, which is going to break the image a little bit. Also, the Atomos is only going to be 1080p. So, and it's not actually 10-bit, it's 8-bit plus FRC. So for the similar price, it doesn't have SDI. It's just HDMI in and out. It does have a loop. It'll record 8K RAW at 30, but it's only 422. So I'm not seeing the value to go for the Atomos if you were just trying to compare the two. Unless something changes, I'm not seeing it in the specs that would rival, and the iPad is a computer on its own. So
yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I don't know when it's going to show up, but I can't wait. Next question.
Art Bly Jr. in Cupertino, California says, can FPS, first-person shooter, settings affect time codes on Hyperdecks? ATEM has time codes set to time of day. Seems to make it all to all Ursas and Hyperdecks. If I change the camera from 5997 to 2976, it seems to break this.
I think that you have to. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Frames per second, not first-person shooter.
Yep.
59 frames isn't currently a well supported standard. It's been always up to 30 frames per second for the longest time. I don't know if everything in the Blackmagic line is capable of actually transferring 59 or 60 frames per second time code as of yet.
I think you want to also look at whether you're using SDI-A or SDI-B, with it when you start getting into that outer range. So once you go to the 3G level or go into the 5994, I think you need to have everything on B, which is Blackmagic. What Blackmagic did. B really should stand for Blackmagic because they're the only ones that did it. So everyone else is SDI-A. There's the industry, which is SDI-A, and Blackmagic, SDI-B. If I remember correctly, we had to switch it there, but I'm not 100% certain that I haven't had to deal with that for a while. We've kept our time code at where it was, but we are now, a lot of us are diving into 5994 and 120. So that at 120 now you have a whole new problem because it's but once you get used to 120, you literally feel like you can have lunch between every frame, when you're watching a film. So you get used to it, but it's causing a whole new set of problems around time code and whether you do it live. We haven't done live yet, but we're capturing 120, and that's going to be the new problem. I'm just warning you. In the next couple of years, a lot of us are going to talk about 120 a lot. Mickey?
Yeah, it's going to require a lot of upgraded hardware. It can't just be done with software because you need more accurate temperature compensated crystals to handle that, higher, what do you call this, clock speed essentially for the timecode generators. Even Sound Devices Scorpio only goes up to 30 at the moment.
Right. Yep. Next question.
TJ Asher, Minneapolis says, can Jeffrey describe his new background? Oops, we got the wrong one to answer on there. Can Jeffrey describe his new background? It looks like cork or shag carpeting. Don't get those confused. Putting shag carpeting in your wine bottles is not a good idea.
It's just crushed. It's a crushed velvet black. It's the only black background I had for something that we're working on. So it's, the brick is right behind it, and other backdrops are to follow, depending on what project I'm working on.
Next question.
Chris Fritchie, Tomball, Texas says, who else on a PC is experiencing issues with their Blackmagic software controller causing a skewed image in Zoom? This happened after the latest Blackmagic ATEM update.
So you're seeing that with just the PC? Or are you going through it right now?
No, I can turn it on if you want to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
It's going to screw up my camera, so.
We can't wait.
Yeah.
How else to troubleshoot it? But
all right, 1 second. Now watch it not work.
Or work, which would be not working.
Well, isn't this interesting?
Okay. We fixed it. You're welcome.
So it's on. Now before it was, okay, well, it seems normal. This is not the case.
Hey,
this has not been the case.
Chris, all I can say is you're welcome.
No, because as soon as this meeting's over, it'll go right back to what it was doing.
You just have to leave the meeting open all the time. That's all that needs to happen.
Okay, well, I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed. Here.
Okay. Can you describe the skewing that you were seeing? Is it like top flagging off to
It's
the
like
side?
on old TV sets, where you're running the rabbit ears and you see the picture, the bottom cuts off, goes to the top, and, just that weird image.
So vertical
but
roll.
We're not seeing it, so it doesn't matter. It points to
I think that it probably is some kind of resetting system. Did you try just unplugging and replugging?
Yeah, I went through multiple USB cables, HDMI cables.
Are you going through a hub?
What do you mean a hub?
Is there any hub between your switcher and the
Airport Extreme?
No, but I mean, are you going your ATEM? This is your ATEM input, right? That's what's getting
Yes.
skewed.
Yeah.
Is the ATEM input going through a? Is the ATEM input going through a hub? Is there any hub, but any like USB-C or Thunderbolt hub between the ATEM
No.
and the computer?
No.
Okay.
And make sure you're in
But
the
it's not. I
software
mean, it's
setup.
not doing it, so it's hard to
Right,
explain.
okay.
It looks like
Alright,
James
so-
Barker has it queued up as to what was happening previously. Can we pin John?
Yep, that's what it was doing up
Yeah.
until right now.
I think that's if you go into the software setup for the software, make sure you're set to the same frame rate as is showing up in your ATEM switcher.
Okay.
Next question.
Cherry Cheetah of Dallas says, any thoughts on keeping camcorders cool during all-day live streams outdoors in the Texas summer heat, other than a tent over the setup?
Bill?
I spend most of my career shooting in Arizona, and so I had a whole bunch of golf umbrellas and rigs to put them on tripod, and I never leave a camera or any other electronic device outside without the best sun protection I could get, because things just get incredibly hot in direct radiant sunlight. That said, that and some sort of fans are about all you get outside that you can take out in the field without trying to haul around a small AC.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, a bunch of towels and ice bags. Throwback to red ones and RED21s.
We once built, or we didn't build, somebody built on a set. I didn't build it. I just saw it. They called it a water cooling system for the red, because they're shooting in Mexico. And it was this bag system that would basically push water in one side and pull it out the other, but it sat around the red. And it just pushed up against it, and it was really well sealed, and it would just constantly be circulating water through it, and it kept the red running, because otherwise the red would just stop. Like where we were shooting was like over 100 degrees, and we were shooting all day, and there was no way a red will operate in that environment. Or back then, the red one wasn't going to operate that. But they built a really cool, like it was like a little like jacket that was about an inch and a half thick with water, and just pulling water through it the whole time. And had some I don't know, channeling and stuff like that they went through a lot of trouble, because of course it was a really expensive shoot, like millions of dollars. So they figured it out. We're going to jump into the last question here. We're running out of time.
Okay, Jonas Dattel, Reutling in Germany. What is your favorite?
Oh, wait. Oh, that's that's not a. That's one for the.
Oh,
hold on. You got Okay,
there we go. First hour. There we go. TJ Asher, which is the better purchase if you can only purchase one of the following: an 1/8 Tiffen Pro Mist filter or a 1/4 Tiffen Pro Mist filter? Which is more versatile, useful for most subjects?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, if it is a higher contrast scene or shot that you're going to use the filter on, go for a 1/8. But if it's a less of a contrasty shot, go for the 1/4. Less is more. You want to be subtle with it.
That's great. Now we're going to change subjects to our second hour. And we're here with John Barker. So John Barker from Here to Record. Well, I don't know if he's from Here to Record, but Here to Record is one of John Barker's things that he does. But is that your main? That's your main gig now, right? You've moved past it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As of this week, I am 100% Here to Record. I was full Here to Record a few years ago, and then I kind of grew tired of that, and took a little break. But now I'm back again with a different way of doing it.
Outstanding. So John, how did you? So if you have questions for John as we start to talk, go ahead and ask them. We'll just talk a little bit at the beginning here to give you guys some time. Tell us a little bit about Here to Record.
Sure. Well, it started as a production company. Over the course of a few years, I went from just doing a couple of events in Copenhagen, and then all of a sudden, every month I was traveling around Europe. Just me with a couple of suitcases and a backpack, basically as much as I could possibly carry on a flight that was reasonable. But within like 2 years or so, I was, cut to me walking through a rainy Edinburgh with 2 huge cases, a backpack, thinking miserably that I don't want to do this anymore, because you spend 4 days to do like 8 hours of work just to go around Europe, and I live in Sweden right now, but originally I'm not from here. So whenever I got here, the language barrier was perfectly fine in terms of day-to-day stuff, but in terms of work, I never really found a way to get in there from the early days. So after that, and over that amount of time, I realized that there was lots of equipment that I could talk about. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Studio Tech TV. It's a YouTube channel that used to talk about lots of gear and stuff. And funny, whenever I started getting into this stuff, I started watching their videos from where they started. And by the time I worked my way up to the end of their YouTube list, they had already stopped doing it, which I found so so sad at the time. So I kind of saw a market there to jump in and make some videos. So I ended up doing that. And the more I went over to conferences and things like that, I was able to create content on behind the scenes, or I needed to buy equipment and I could just talk about that. So that's where the sort of groundwork for the videos came back in the day.
And tell us a little bit about your process about making videos for here to record.
It's actually changed so much over the years. In the early days, it was I've kind of been inspired, obviously, by lots of other people, the way they work. I don't know if you watch Lon Seidman, I think is his name. Mm-hmm. He does a lot of tech reviews, and over the years, I watched a lot of his videos, and I liked the way he did sort of a do it live to tape sort of scenario. So I used to set up 2-3 cameras and try to do everything live to tape. And then I went for the more, A-roll, B-roll style videos, but I found those took a lot of time. And then I've moved around a lot to lots of different houses and apartments over the years. So every time I moved somewhere new, it became a new process. But now in the last year, I've moved into this tiny house here, and we bought it, and it's much more of a fixed location. So I'm working my way towards, like I mentioned in the previous the show there, where I can't have everything set up all the time as much as I would love to, but I'm refining the setup. So it is just a plywood box in front of me here that I pull out of that cupboard over there and connect a few cables. But my computer and my ATEM are all in the cupboard back there, and I've just brought over what I really need: a camera and a monitor and a few things like that.
Interesting. And then you do more, of course, than video. You actually develop tools. Can you tell us a little bit about those? Yeah, for sure. Whenever I was going to conferences way back and recording them, I kind of got into these JavaScript conferences. I would watch lots of JavaScript conferences, but I didn't know anything about JavaScript at the time. But I could see that there was answers on the presentations and I could see a path to helping me make better productions. So my first thing was sort of like a live stream break, I called it. During live streams, they would have a lunch break and I would show, here's what's coming up next and after that. And that very much became one of my first applications, which was graphics, H2R graphics, where I needed it for a production, but I was able just to create a really simple graphics application that I could show lower thirds and tickers and all that kind of stuff. And then that kind of just grew over time to be, well, I kind of need this other application that does this and that, and I've been building them. It's really crazy to me now to think that I actually create software that people use whenever I was just starting out and guessing all the way along. And what do you primarily develop in? Mostly it is JavaScript and it's React kind of on top of that. And then I package all of my applications using something called Electron, which allows you to package these sort of applications for macOS and for PCs and Linux without me having to learn each of those. So it does come with a lot of caveats, and you do have to kind of check it on each of them, but it does mean that I don't ever get that question of like, will it come to the PC? Or, it's already there, sort of. And can you give us a list of the apps that you've built? Because I know you have the graphics, H2R graphics. Exactly. I think do I have my little thing? Okay, there we go. I have 4 logos ready to go. Now, did you do that with your graphics app? See, that's the best part. Well, that would have been great. I didn't actually. No. What did you do that graphic in? Because this is with Keynote. Because I realized this is the perfect example of something. Over the years, obviously, my applications are like almost entirely built for me.
So today I wanted to show these icons, and I was like, well, I can't do that right now, but I probably in like 2 weeks' time will have this availability in the graphics software. So that's what I do. So the first one, H2R graphics, we talked about. It's just you download it onto Mac, PC, Linux, and you open a second window and drag that out to your ATEM, key out the green, and show the graphics. And it's very much the way I like to describe it is like your first graphics application as opposed to your final one. But right. I mean, it has a lot of use cases. It's completely free as of right now. I'm sure we'll come back to that later, but and it will always be a free version, of course. So you're able to just throw a bunch of graphics in there and show them to your viewers during live streams and all that stuff. And over the years, I've been adding loads of features to it. I'll just go through the rest of the applications while I have them here. H2R gear is much more complicated, and I can give a little mini demo of that in a minute or two, but it's a way of doing signal paths and preparing pack lists and gear for your next gig. Either it's planning stuff or going out on a gig. Yeah. I'll come to that one because that's kind of the fun one. The SuperSource one, SuperSource layouts, is just a really sort of simple way of creating SuperSource layouts. It kind of speaks for itself. I found that whenever I was getting into the SuperSource stuff, I realized that the ATEM software control is just not a way to build visual things. So I just wanted to make a really quick way of building layouts, downloading macros, putting them in your ATEM, and it works pretty well. And I can come back to a little quick demo of that later. And then H2R Control is my kind of upcoming application, which is just a way of bringing a multi-view into a computer and clicking on that multi-view just to really simplify the whole experience. We were talking about this in the pre-show a little today, which is just like the ATEM has so many great features, but in my opinion, the ATEM software control is sort of an interface. When you get in there, it's you have to explain it to people, and I want to just try to remove that feeling of what is this, and just give people the simplest interface as possible. So that's the sort of 4 I'm working on mainly at the minute.
Yeah, let's see gear. You said you had a little demo of that?
Yeah, exactly. Let me just I think I'll just cut to this in the ATEM here. If you can let me know if you can't see it that great, but I think for now it'll work just fine. And so this is you can see that, right? I
can.
This is a very overview of what H2R gear looks like when you get going with it. But in its essence, it's just a way of creating signal paths. So you're able to bring in equipment that's either you can make yourself or you can use the community library of lots of gear. And once you have it in there, what you're able to do is, if I just zoom in a little, so you can see here that I have my, this is the Smart View Video Hub that I will one day have in this studio here. And I've connected all my cables, and I'm able to highlight each cable.
And does it know that like you can't connect an SDI to a power or an SDI to HDMI or whatever?
It does. So if I try to connect this USB connection over here to SDI, it does say you can't connect USB to SDI. I have some ideas coming in the future of like ways to help you with that. But what you do is just draw cables from outputs to inputs, and now you have that cable connected, and you're able to see where everything kind of flows when you go to a gig. And you can build up pretty complex stuff. I mean, one of my sort of issues to this point has been time, and as of Monday, I have plenty of it now, so I'm able to actually spend some time in really refining the 70 issues that people have posted to me during the beta phase of this application. But some other things that just pop up would be like a pack list, which is generated automatically based on all the gear you add here. So I'm able to see, okay, I need at least 5 USB cables, 8 HDMI cables, etc., etc. And then I can just go through and say, yeah, I've packed those, and at the top it tells you what percentage of the packing you're through. And like I said, you can either use gear that's been added by other people, or you can pop into the builder here, and you can basically build up whatever equipment that you want to use. In here, you configure what all the inputs and outputs are, and then from there, you can bring those into your plans and actually really, what I found most of all, I've been doing a lot of consultancy recently, and I'm able just to quickly throw together a signal path just to explain concepts that are otherwise really difficult to get across in certain circumstances.
build signal paths for almost everything we do. And we talked about doing what you're doing for the last 10 years. I mean, there's high-end tools that will do a lot of these things for, big integrators and so on and so forth, but there's nothing that's really accessible and easy to use. And it's been, and we were talking, and it has to be able to, so you can click on it and you can't put the wrong thing into the wrong thing, and it keeps track of it and it does all the things. And anyway, so it looks genius. I'm definitely gonna check it out.
I'm really excited about it, actually. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's been like, I started working on this about 2 years ago, and only in the last 6 months or so it's really taken off. But everybody I showed it to in the early days was like, "Oh, that's great, but how will anybody ever start from scratch?" And I was like, I believe that people will add things in there, and you can use those things.
And how do you add new, like if you have a new device that you want to add, how do you do that?
Yeah, I was just starting to show it a little bit there, but if I just go back into the interface
so there
here,
you define it.
Exactly. So in the interface here, you would just add it here, give it a name like the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera, and that has a HDMI output. So I would change this maybe to HDMI, and I can actually give it a category. I've added a few so far, which add little bits and pieces to it just to be a bit more visual. And then I can keep it private for myself, or I can make it public, so anybody sees that. And if I just pop back into one of these plans over here, let's see, in this test plan I was just throwing together, I can pop in there and see, well, I want to add, let's say, an ATEM Mini in here. And what comes back is actually loads of user submitted ones and some that I've added. Again, this is pretty early days beta stuff, but it's coming together nicely. And you can find all different versions that people prefer, or you can filter by only gear items that you've added yourself, just so you only see what you added.
That's great. It's really good. And then you do have one of the reasons that we talked about super sources last week was so that we'd be ready to listen to you talk about super sources this week. So let us know about your super source tool. And
yeah, well, I was so sad not to be on last week, but here I am today, so I can talk about it now. Yeah. So I can just show this again. This is super source layouts, and like I said, I was really unhappy with the way you could do it in the software control. So what I wanted was clickable, exactly. And I can't believe it's been that way for years. But this was one of those projects that I just had the idea 2 weeks before the Mini Extreme started shipping. But I had access to one of the older ATEMs, so I was able to grab that and use it to build this. So what you're able to do is turn on up to the 4 boxes here. I don't really have features for the extra DVEs yet, but I'm coming to that. So I can add up to the 4 boxes. And a feature I added actually 2 weeks ago, based on the chat in the officers Discord, was the ability to add images. So here I've grabbed the mat in the kitchen, one of the images that Alex made available in the Discord. And what I'm able to do is grab my cameras, change the size of them a little. I'll just do it roughly for now. And then add another one over here. Change the size.
For anybody who hasn't done this is a lot easier to do here than it is inside of the ATEM.
Exactly. It changes a lot. And I can choose the source and cropping and stuff. And what it spits out here is the XML for the macro. So I can change the name of that and the macro index. If you've played with macros, you'll know about that. But I can just copy that and paste it into the XML of my ATEM. Now, I'm not going to do that right now because I might mess up things live. But that's where it started. And then I had this crazy idea of, well, why bother even making people do this? So what I made available was a pack that you can purchase through this website here if you want to. But you don't have to. But if you want to, you get this pack and PDF that shows a bunch of predefined layouts that I've built up just to give you a reference. And what comes with this pack is this PDF. And then if I have it here somewhere, you have all of these as macro form. So I can open any of these and it'll give me the same XML code as in here.
And one of the big things here is that XML code is like touching all those. The problem you get into with macros, the thing that drives me crazy actually the most with macros, is that you have to touch every variable inside of the software. So if you just do it inside the software, you have to go in and move something, turn it on, turn it off, or change the setting and change it back, or it won't it won't touch the variable, and then it doesn't save it, and then there's good reasons for that, but in this case, yours just overwrites everything. Like it just says, I don't, in the things that are needed for the super source, it just does what it needs to do.
Exactly right. I've not enjoyed making macros in the past, so it was nice to do this. And one bonus thing, I was actually chatting with Felipe yesterday, who's on the panel often, and he said that he just sends this PDF to his customer or his client and says, why don't you just look through that, pick one, send me the C code or whatever you want, and I can build my super source based on that. So it might even be something that you could maybe send to somebody and just say, just kind of move these boxes around the way you want them, and I can take it from there. So it's
that's great.
Plenty of things, yeah.
Yeah, very cool. All right, let's jump to the questions.
First one comes from Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota. He says, is it possible to put in super sources into the original ATEM Mini using this?
Well, not really. The feature isn't there. I actually made a video on my YouTube channel about stacking a couple of ATEM Minis together in order to make sort of a super source like effect. It's sort of one of those things that you have everything set up, just don't touch it again, and it'll work the way you think it will. But if you go in there and start, I accidentally turned off this key over here. So you can kind of do it, and I know you've talked about that before in the past on the officers too, where you can chain a couple of the minis together and use their abilities to do it. But I find explaining that to people, it is complicated.
Yeah, I've chained 4 of them together, where I chained 3 of them into 3 different inputs, and then I have my telestrator on the 4th one, and then I have so I can draw over anything, but I then had 9 or 12 inputs to work with, inside of, and I want to do it with the extreme. I just haven't had the budget to stack up 8 extremes, which it's in my head. Like it works in my head. You think about all the super sources you'd have and all the DVEs you'd have. You have this huge, for 10,000, for the same price as a Constellation, you actually get more inputs, more IO in a weird way. Next question.
Jonas Nattel's next from Reutling in Germany. What's your favorite stack?
That is a good question. I must admit to you, Jonas, that I was disappointed because I read this question earlier and I thought it said, what's your favorite snack? So I got excited about that. But in terms of development stack, I guess I can't say I don't have a favorite in a sense. I know like sort of JavaScript and stuff because of all those years of conferences and it all soaked in. So I just went, full force into that. And I think that was a really good method because you start to look around sometimes and you see, I use React and you start to look at things like Vue and Angular, if you're familiar with those libraries and frameworks, and you start to have that feeling of maybe I should jump over there. So I'm just going to stick with what I know right now.
So we have to follow up and find out what your favorite snack is as well.
I wish I had it prepared. Probably like chili nuts, maybe.
Chili nuts. I did not see that one coming. All right.
Yeah, me neither, actually. It just came out.
Very good. Next question.
Guy Cocker in Seattle here on the panel and an old friend of the show. What gave you the idea to create the website h2rgear.com? And can you show us how to use the website efficiently?
Maybe you asked that before I showed it. I can show it some more if you want to after. Yeah. What gave me the idea? I think actually it was traveling around at conferences around Europe. Once you leave the country, basically, you kind of are stuck with what equipment you have. So I would always go to a gig and I would get there and I would realize, I needed 4 HDMIs, not 3 that I brought. So the pack list was really the crux of the application. And then what came after that really was like, okay, well, I guess I want to drag a cable from here to here and make it more visual. I definitely tucked into other things like, using Keynote, or I used to use a lot of pen and paper to do this kind of stuff. But what you don't get is that sort of, SDI doesn't connect to HDMI without that connection in between. So I guess it evolved from, like everything else I built, a real need and a necessity, and maybe making the mistakes in the past and not wanting to make those mistakes again.
Next question.
I think a lot of people are fascinated with your space there. And Doug Johnson in Orem, Utah says, can you summarize your current tiny studio setup?
Yes, I can. I think I have this photo here of the house in general. So this is the tiny house. It's 25 square meters, if that means anything to you, on wheels, so I can bring it wherever I want. But in theory, I don't want to move it very often. It's here in Sweden, and it's going to stay there for a while and maybe move it once more. So with that space comes some challenges, and I do have a video about this on the channel in general, but I live here with my girlfriend and my cat, so we don't have that much space to play with in general. And I've tried my best to make everything removable from this one table. We have basically one work table as well. It's a adjustable height table, so my girlfriend can do certain projects on it and I can make videos and stuff. So the whole idea behind this is a box that can be set on the table. And the reason I'm not going to show that now is because I'm still working on this, but the box can be lifted and put in my cupboard back there. And my other thinking is that the ATEM lives in the cupboard because I don't really want to mess with it when I'm live. I just have a Streamdeck in front of me instead. And the speed of setup is really important, and the ability to clean everything away. That was my two main challenges, I would say.
I've often thought that if you just took a tiny house and you put a drivetrain and auto driving, I'd be fine. Like just give me slightly better wheels and set it down on something, and then I just have my tiny house and I just keep doing what I'm doing and walking around, and the house is just doing what it needs. Like I need to be here in the next couple hours, and then I just keep going.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
It's definitely the dream. It's the dream. All right. Next question.
Leading to the phrase, "Where are you located?" I don't really know right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know Windows.
I'm somewhere on the road someplace. Jonas Dattel of Reutlingen, Germany, has Blackmagic killed H2R Logger?
Yeah, that's one of the many projects that I've built in the past, where what I realized was whenever I go to certain equipment or certain gigs, I didn't want to bring all the equipment. I just bring the cameras and my laptop. But I didn't want to come home and re-edit everything, because that is a terrible idea, because you're kind of doing the same work twice. So I built an application which you kind of start recording and press start on the application at the same time, and then you just do live edits in the application, and then later you turn that into a Final Cut Pro, because I was using that at the time, Final Cut Pro project, pull in all the cameras and your edit is all built from there. Mm-hmm. But that was 2 years before the whole ATEM Mini line came out and the Resolve projects, and it just, as soon as I saw that, it just didn't make any sense for me to keep building something that they're so deeply integrated with their cameras and with Resolve that it was a challenge for me to continue to build that. So it was one of those projects that just sort of got left behind. There's many of those.
That's good. Yeah, the only thing it doesn't work is there is another company that does a hardware record, and I can't think of the name of it right now. I think they're out of Australia, that you can plug an Ethernet in, and we need it specifically for the constellations. So if you're doing something bigger, it'll do the same logging. And I just can't think of the name of the company.
Is it Baz Controllers? Is that?
I think it is.
Yeah. Baz? Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So so the problem is, there's still a need for it in the SDI world, but in the just saying. I'm just saying. And there's all these people without the ISO version of the switcher that still need it. See,
that's what I need, another project.
Yeah, exactly. Next question.
David Brady in New York is up next with, in the pack, is the PDF an accurate representation for building overlays, or can you provide the XY coordinates for each source?
The PDF is very much a visual representation. I did mention that very specifically in the PDF, because I built that in a design tool, because that was a lot faster than me building it in the web app at the time. So it's very much a visual representation of where boxes will be. And then in addition to that, with the download, you get all the macro files already in there. So you could, in theory, just open any one of those and grab the coordinates out of those if you wanted. Or, of course, you could just open the macro you wanted, load it into the switcher, run that, and now your switcher already knows the coordinates, and you could just save that forever. So that would be your main layout that you like to use.
That's great. Next question.
Keenan Campbell, Princeton, New Jersey. Can you do a package for us to purchase all of your products?
I had a summer break, like a spring break a few weeks ago, and I went for a walk for about 15 kilometers every day, and it gave me a lot of time to think. And one of the many ideas that I came up with along the way was some sort of a premium package. So potentially, I'm thinking about it.
And if you've got more questions for John, make sure to throw them into Mukana as we keep moving forward. Next question.
Chris Widener of Lafayette, Indiana is up next with, are you going to replace your current box with a flight case of some kind for in-person events or conferences?
Well, one of my rethinkings on my new freelance career, so to speak, is that I don't want to leave the house very often.
A man after my own heart.
Yeah, I know. After all that traveling and over the years and all sorts of gigs and stuff, I'm setting my reason to leave the house bar very high. And ideally, the reason to leave the house bar includes a company that has all the equipment as well. So my idea really is to bring a backpack with the odd, a screen that I like, or a small screen that I like, or the companion and my laptop. So really, that's what I'm thinking of. I'm not really looking for that. The sort of my engineering is all focused on building stuff in the house here that I can put out and put away.
Yeah. I think a lot of us that have done a lot of travel, I think people think about it, and if you've done medium amount of travel, you kind of go, oh, I could do a more medium kind of travel, and I think that might be the case. But for those of us who spent a lot of time on the road, I know that I'm finding, especially now after the long break, and I had taken a little bit of a break. I hadn't traveled as much the year before COVID, and then COVID hit and everything else, and now I find myself extremely resistant to going very far. And I think that's going to be an interesting thing as we kind of move forward. Is that something that for you, it's just the jostling about?
It was. It was the 3-4 days away for 1 day of work. It was you tell people, like, I still tell people I went around Europe. I was in this country, that city, and they're like, oh wow, you got to see the Eiffel Tower when you were in France, and you're like, no, I saw airport, a hotel, a conference room, the hotel, the airport, and I had 10 minutes in the evening to have some dinner, and that was it. So there's sort of it sounds great, and then you go there. And I'm not saying it was awful either, of course not, but I'm just saying that it wasn't as luxurious and something that I really want to do again.
The best thing that I did within Pixel Core was that we instituted safety days, because we'd end up with this situation where gear wouldn't show up on time. And so suddenly it's really stressful in Tokyo or in Paris or somewhere. Or something went wrong and something has to be edited, or something has to be handled, or something has to be returned, or whatever. So on both ends, there was always a day and a half, sometimes 2 days of safety that not the whole crew stayed, but there'd always be one or two people that were on the safety days, and usually it wasn't the same on both ends. So someone would come in early with all the gear, for instance, because when you said checking, how much can you check with United? You can check a lot. So we would, one person, our record for one person is 24 Pelican cases. But they would come in early to make sure that if gear, and their job was to get there, get to the hotel, open up all the gear, make sure that TSA hadn't broken anything. That's usually what happened for us, was the TSA had repacked it badly and had broken or something. And then the goal was they'd have to land safely before we left, so that we could grab something and put it in another case and take it with us. On the other end, you'd have it. And it was the best part, because if everything went well, you had a free day in Tokyo or Paris or, Siem Reap or wherever you were to do the event. And we got to see stuff. But outside of that, you're absolutely right. We just didn't get to see anything.
And in theory, I did the same thing. Every year I would go to Edinburgh to do a gig. And because of flights, I always had to stay there the whole Saturday. There was no option, and there was no gig that day. I just had a free day in Edinburgh every year. And in theory, I always thought that was a good idea. And then every year I would get up, edit some stuff from the conference, go to the cinema, have a meal, and I'd look at my clock, and it was 3 o'clock, and I was like, okay, I could go on the flight now, So it didn't really, and especially when you do it by yourself every time, it doesn't make any sense to bring another person, and so you're just sort of sitting in the city and tapping your fingers,
eating haggis. When I was in Scotland, all I did is I had haggis 3 times a day, in something like haggis and eggs and haggis and chicken and haggis. I love haggis. So anyway, next question.
Noah Sargent Fullerton is proposing a Doug Johnson, John Barker YouTube collaboration. What are your thoughts?
We have done a live stream once in the past, so you could always check that out if you wanted. That was whenever I didn't really know how Zoom worked. So Doug came in on 360p and he didn't look that great. So we should definitely do that again. But again, almost every question that I get asked these days, up until this week, the answer has been time. So for sure that will help. And time zone is really difficult too. But definitely.
How do you get internet in that little house, in the tiny house?
That's a good question. We are kind of in the middle of the countryside, so it was a challenge whenever we moved here. Not only is fiber not available to this house because they stopped running the line. It's like a private road, complicated. But anyway, they stopped running the line before this land here. Not only that, but they also cut the broadband line as well because they decided it's not worth supporting this area for that either. So 4G internet is the only solution. So my early tests with that were very disappointing. I got really excited that I could do live streams. Now I have a place. Finally, I can do this. And I did some tests and it was awful. So what I've done is I've put a 4G router here in the house, and then attached to that are two antennas on the roof, and they're kind of pointed in the right general direction. One of them being directional and one of them being omnidirectional. I get lots of questions about this, but I'm by far a expert on this stuff.
4G.
Yeah, it went from, without the antennas, it went from maybe 10 down and 2 or 3 up on a kind of goodish day, and now it's about 50 down and about 15 up. So I've been really impressed by it.
And is the 4G expensive?
Yeah, it can be. It costs probably in the region of $50 a month, I would maybe say.
Oh, that's nothing.
Oh yeah, so but for what you get for fiber here for about $30 a month is, excellent speed. So for me, it's very expensive.
Can you see anybody's house from your house?
Yeah, well, the way this tiny house works is that, well, obviously we needed to find some land to put it on. So my girlfriend's sister has been very kind to let us park it here. We actually have permission for the next 10 years with the local authorities. So for the next 10 years, it can be here. So we can see their house, and there are a few other country and farm houses around. So we're certainly not in the wilderness at all. It's just sort of a private road out of the town, enough space for them just to say, you know what, you're not going to get fast internet unless you go 4G.
Right. Interesting. Next question.
Mickey M., our friend here on the show every day from the Philippines, says H2R gear looks great, and I'm excited to try it out. Any plans of making a mobile version that syncs to a web account? Plus, sharing syncing diagrams with crew members would be awesome.
Yes, good question. Maybe I didn't make it clear on the demo, but this is entirely, unlike my other applications, this one is entirely web-based, so it's all web-based. So you can pull up the website on your phone and see the pack lists. You can't do any of the planning. I don't think I have any time to build that kind of complexity on a mobile application, but certainly the pack lists and stuff. I do want to make that more of a integrated app in the future for sure, but you can do that with mobile devices right now.
Next question.
Tommy Johnson, St. Paul, Minnesota, says, do you have a fiber? Oh, well, there we go. Just what you're up and down. And we just covered those. So we're moving on to Gordon Lake in Los Angeles. Do you plan to do animated super sources?
I definitely do plan. I did some experimenting with it, and it is, of course, it's possible. But a part of the issue that I've found is the direction to go. We were talking about Mix Effect, the new application for iOS, which talks directly to the ATEM. You can use Doug Johnson has a sort of pack of SuperSource macros that do animation. You have the A to Z Productions YouTube channel that have a different take on it. So my problem or concern right now is just finding the simplest way for people to do this. That's kind of been my main focus on a lot of these applications, is just what is the absolute easiest way to get this going. And whenever you add the animations in there, it gets complex enough that I really wanted to reconsider it. So while it is possible, of course, I just want to go down the right route, and time is what I need for that.
Yeah. Which you now have.
Turns out.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, just because you can doesn't mean you should is the question that comes to mind. And you said keeping it simple, and that's one of the struggles I'm having with just we could put all kinds of sizzle, but then it would look like something with kids with crayons would do, and it's like And then Alex, to your question of getting a super source in time, easy access for the switching system. I mean, I assume this all works inside of vMix and OBS and all of the other systems as well.
Well, this is ATEM only right now. I mean, the one that yeah.
Correct.
Right. Got it.
It's something that we are always experimenting with. Like the super sources for Matt in the Kitchen have rounded edges. I have a tendency to add rounded edges to super sources, mostly because a lot of broadcast trucks won't do it because it's hard. And so I like to do things because they're hard. But the problem is it does limit what we can do. Like it doesn't limit it, but we have to think a lot harder about it. Whereas if we just have floating windows over top of a generalized background, there's 1,000 different things you can do, and that's why they do it in the trucks. They do it that way so that you don't have to think about your graphic, for it. I always feel like if you're going to do a super source, you should go all the way, and make it cool. But animation is not something I didn't really think about it that much until we were watching Felipe's presentation with the nice little transitions, and I was like, oh, it's kind of nice.
Yeah, I think I have a similar opinion, because a lot of the applications that I of course have built entirely by myself are also to my taste, and I am very cautious until again I saw Felipe's demo too. But I'm very cautious on unlocking features to people that make things look the way I wouldn't want them to look, if you know what I mean. So I tend to only spend my time doing the stuff that I like the look of, but maybe I'm starting to change my mind on that too.
Yeah, the nice little soft transitions from one thing to another to tell stories. I've been kind of thinking about how to really build, whether using some of your software and some of the other ones, of how to build like a really great, when I do presentations. I have a presentation next week that I'm working on pretty hard, and it's a simple presentation. It's like 4 or 5 slides, but I've decided that for the clientele that I'm giving it to, I'm going for shock and awe. So here's how this all works, and I think that, but those kinds of little animations could be useful, inside of that. So I'm like you probably, though, is I like most things to be static, and I'm like, you have to really talk me into graphics, even though I've done I got into the business of broadcast by doing graphics for TV. That's how I got into the broadcast area, was specifically that. Now I'm like, oh, I don't know if we need that, but yeah, interesting. Next question
comes from Chris Walker in Lafayette, Indiana, and Chris says, have you found an easy way to rack mount CTEK ATEM 156 by any chance?
I have one in front of me, but I have not rack mounted it. I've just sort of screwed it to the box of plywood that I have. So no, I have not.
What do you think of the CTEK?
I really like it. I do really like it. It's actually my main monitor now for all of my day-to-day work. I am compromising a little for that use case because of the size. I do have a couple of other monitors. Space is an issue, so I can't have everything. But I've compromised on the size of it. But what it allows me to do is, in fact, I even run my entire PC through the ATEM every single day. So everything I do goes through the ATEM, which means that I can record stuff at any time I want, which is another one of those sort of barrier to entry, a bit like my answer in the show there. Like the faster you can do stuff, the more likely you are to do it. So jumping on Zoom calls and looking your best helps a lot. And by running everything through the ATEM, and therefore this monitor, I'm getting really used to the size, and I'm really enjoying the whole use of it, and being able to loop it back out again and go to other things. It really helps.
We had a question, I think, yesterday about that monitor. Does the camera control from the ATEM get to the cameras through the monitor?
I actually don't have any Blackmagic cameras to test, but I would love to know. I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Next question.
Mike Henderson is up next from Colorado, and he says, just upgraded from the Extreme to the Extreme from the Mini Pro. What are some good use cases for using the second media pool? Is it commonly used for the super sources?
That is a good question. I use it a lot for demo purposes. So what I do is set one of the media pulls to my background for the super source, and then I use the other media slot as the sort of presentation, so to speak. So for me, I use it for that, but maybe someone else has a better idea than that.
Go ahead, Jonas.
I often see it in the top right, and then Media Player 2 as a background.
Yeah, I use my. I mean, I just use all my. I have in my constellation. I have 4 of them, and they're always being used. And again, if I'm not doing a ton of macros, it's nice because, like for instance, right now with Mad in the Kitchen, which we're going to probably evolve from this week, I use the different MEs and the different media pools just to be able to just jump to an ME as an input. So that whole super source and the problem is with Mad in the Kitchen, we have a mixture of super sources and DVEs that are being used. So that is a little bit to set up, which would be great. I heard you say that you were looking at being able to get to the DVEs as well.
Yeah, I'm hoping to do that. I know that people want more than 4, so there's always more to add.
Yeah,
but I did think of one more use case that I've actually been talking to a few people through recently. If you don't want to use like H2R graphics, for example, you can have the ability with your 2 media slots to show a logo on the DSK1 the whole way through your production, and then you can use DSK2 and the second slot along with something like Companion to be showing lower thirds and changing them throughout the whole production. So that's more and more people are saying, well, I don't have an extra computer to run graphics software. How can I get around that? So that's a good way to use it.
And that was it was funny is we've bought, there was for one event by 2012, I think, we bought 9 or 10 of the ATEM, remember the original tent with little fins on the back, the little 1U production switchers, and we bought 10 of them because it was the television studio. It was the cheapest way to super a graphic onto all the videos. So literally we're just using one input and supering a graphic over it and pushing it out the other end, because then those became 9 sources into a regular switcher, and it was a relatively inexpensive way to do it. So to your point, and a lot of times you end up with more things. You might end up with one graphic in one corner, another graphic that says live in the other corner, and what you'll find generally is that you'll use as many it's like a downstream, keyers and graphics are like a bag. The bigger the bag is, the more you'll put in it. So next question.
Tommy Johnson, St. Paul, is curious. You mentioned that you were finally able to quit your day job and do this full time. He wants to know what that day job was that you don't need anymore, and congratulations on making the transition.
That's a good question. Well, luckily that day job was production based, and it was for a company here in Sweden. So I was able to go to their office instead of traveling around Europe, and I could go to their office or go out to certain gigs around town in Malmö in southern Sweden. So, I left very amicably. I just realized that I wanted to make content and make these apps that people were asking me to help them with. Funny, one of the odd things over the years was a lot of my applications have been free, because I always said to myself that if I can keep them free, then I don't necessarily need to, support people, reply to their emails the next day, be on top of it. I can, say, well, it is free, so I'll get back to you. But what I've found that every single email that comes in, I reply within, as fast as I can over the years. So it's kind of like a support. As much as anything else, development is a support job. So I need time to support and add features. And whenever you branch out to have, 4 or 5 active projects all in beta all the time, it gets a little bit tiring to say someday. And especially with the H2R gear application, is just like the idea list has just ballooned. And I really wanted to get on top of that and make videos, and the ATEM Mini Extreme videos have done really well. I'm super happy with those. So I just kind of seen this as an opportunity now to do it. So it's not that I don't need the job, but I just want to do all this other stuff instead.
Was that part of moving to the small house? Is it just gives you a lot more freedom to figure it out without having a lot of overhead?
Not quite. That was very much we want to live somewhere, and this is a great option to do it. So over the years, we've moved for different reasons, my job or my girlfriend's studies and things like that. So we moved around a lot, and we finally just wanted to be in a more fixed location, but with a little bit more, ability to move a little bit. So this is perfect.
You could if you wanted to.
This is the perfect way to do it, where you could either get a tiny house that comes via crane and they set it down, or you could get one on wheels and someday you can just drive off with it. And that's the one we chose.
And did you buy it pre-made or did you make it yourself?
We bought it pre-made. One of our sort of constraints was time, that we wanted it within 6 months or so. And whenever you start, well, first of all, if you were going to make it yourself, then that's a lot longer. But even if you want to work with a company to tell them what to do and dictate the design, then you're still talking about a year of work. So in this case, there's a company in Poland that we just said, of your 3 options, we want that option, and we don't want that, but we want you to add that. And then within 6 months, it pulled up outside here, and it actually came.
I can't underline, like, one of the secrets to like how I got to where I got when I was in my 20s was that I lowered my overhead dramatically. And I had almost no overhead, for years, so that I could just take jobs because they would move my career forward, not because I needed to pay for something, And so that was so I just think that's pretty genius. Go ahead,
yeah.
Scott.
Well, I'm just, again, in community, John, you are so inspiring to me, because what I'm realizing is I am a startup, and yes, I have been, this is my full-time job, what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And consequently, I think I'm going to ask Courtney to revoice our new opening, and it's going to be Mad in the Kitchen Live, now in beta.
Next question.
Jonas Nautel has a specific one. He's back from Reutlingen with any plans to add SuperSource borders to H2R graphics, syncing it with the ATEM.
That is a good idea. Now there's a plan to do it. A lot of these ideas come via people asking me, and then I put them on the list of things to get to. I must admit, though, when it comes to H2R graphics in particular, I did mention earlier that I had a gig that I needed graphics for, and I realized at the time I could just build one myself. And then on top of that has come years of features, and we're at the point now where I have loads of different features, and I want to basically start over again and build it from the ground up with much more scalability. So a lot of the new features coming to H2R graphics will be when I get to them. That's sort of the part A of the question, and then the second part of the sort of thing that's slowing me down is that I can't get to that rebuild because every week I do a live stream and I come up with a great new idea to put in. I think I have my DSK here to show the latest. This is whenever you get a sponsored message during a live stream, you get an auto-triggered event that shows how much the person gave and some balloons to sort of celebrate the occasion. So those two things together have meant that H2R graphics is very much something I really want to spend a lot more time on.
That's great. Yeah, and Jonas, you're talking about just the one that's built into the switcher, just the border, or
no? The idea would be that H2R graphic can do the overlay like for Mad in the Kitchen.
Right.
That you no longer just sync the boxes to the graphic, but the graphic syncs to the box.
Yeah,
so
you could animate it.
Again, move it around freely, and you get your rounded edges still and all of that. That would be really cool. Amazing.
Yeah,
that would be really cool. I think one of the kind of concerns up until this point that I haven't figured out yet, but I think I'll get there eventually, is choosing which of the apps that can start talking to an ATEM and which ones shouldn't, and building all of those things in there. I really want to have a part of the reason I'm able to do all this stuff now is I have time to structure these applications and the future workload, as opposed to, I've got 60 minutes, I'll just throw a feature on top of this instead.
Right. Chris?
Yeah, I've been looking at the H2R gear builder, and I'm highly tempted to populate it with some vintage MITK tape decks, and I'm noticing a lack of just plain BNC inputs for composite. Any chance?
He just beat him.
Any chance?
I knew better. I knew better than to call on Fenwick.
If you send me the email address that you registered with, then I'll be sure to block you from the account, and we can fix it that way.
Very good. All right, next question.
Ken Jones is up next from Seattle, Washington, and he says, John, what started you down this path? Not medicine, not law, not plumbing, or carpentry. What was the spark that got you going into this kind of development?
That is a very, very good question indeed. I think in general, the path that I'm on now very much started with a sort of early days doing musical theater is where I really started. I studied it a little bit, but I also did it like in an amateur sense. And that got me on stage, and then that got me behind the camera, which then got me into live production, which then got me into the applications. So I think in those early days, I really do think that's where I came from to get to here, and then being willing to jump on the camera and make these videos. I think all of that has been a baseline for where I'm at right now.
Next question.
Shane Foley, Ashland, Oregon, is our next questioner. Thanks for all your hard work, John. For those of us not using ATEMs, is Vingster your suggested way to bring H2R graphics into a live stream?
I think I'm going to have to look up Vingster just to be reminded what it actually is. But for the most part, just to answer that, I find people use it with OBS and they just do screen scrapes. You can also use the NDI tools to bring it into productions with NDI. But a future iteration of H2R graphics will allow for more of a browser-based output that you could bring into things like vMix much easier. So I guess without knowing exactly what Vingster is, I think a future upgrade will be a much easier way to do this, because I really built this with the ATEM in mind from the start.
Jonas? Nope, can't hear you. Jonas, did you have a...
Winchester wouldn't work with H2R graphics because it needs a web URL, and that's not yet available for H2R.
Next question.
Not yet.
Guy Cochran here in Seattle, and this is an excellent question. What can we as the Office Hours community do to help you get to the next level, John?
That is a very good question. In fact, you know what I'm going to do right now is one of my many things to do during this freelance time is paid consultancy, but that's not what I'm going to promote now. It's more of a chatting. Me and Jonas have been chatting this week. Me and Felipe have been chatting a little bit this week, and I have one of those Calendly links that I'll just throw into Mechana now for like a 30-minute calendar chat. So the best thing you can actually do is, if you want to grab a time and we can just chat about what you do, what I do, and I found that over the last 6 to 12 months of just chatting with people to see what they do and how we can help each other, or how we can just know each other. That's the best thing you can do, definitely.
That's great. Fantastic. Last question.
And this one's even better. Ken Jordan in Surrey in the UK says, why hasn't everybody in Office Hours signed up to John Barker's Patreon yet? What's stopping you people?
What and tell us a little about it. Why did you choose Patreon?
I think the reason I chose it at the time was because that's what everyone else was picking at the time. But what I've learned since then is I have to have as many different ways as possible. So I just opened a YouTube membership as well. I have the Gumroad stuff thanks to Jonas, who was using that and kind of tipped me on that as well. And the consultancy too. I think what I've realized is people with the best wills in their hearts, they click on the Patreon link and they see they need to create an account and they say, I'll come back to it later. So over time, I've just realized that if I just kind of provide all the options, people can pick whatever way they want to support. But if they don't want to do any of those monetary supports at all, then again, just like I'm on the Discord, just pop in there and you can give me some encouragement if you want. But you can also just chat about how you use the applications, because I've found that people send me emails 99% of the time to say, here's a problem, instead of the 1% that I got one yesterday just to say, hey, this is cool, here's how I use it. So I want to hear those kind of stories as well.
That's great. What are you working on next? Like, do you have anything that's other than just the apps that you have? Now that you've got this time, how are you putting it together?
My first real job will be actually creating a boilerplate for all of the applications that'll come later. So until this point, I've just been sort of starting from kind of scratch each time. So really what I want to do is build that like core, and then I have a great new idea in a week's time. I'll just build from that and I can ship it pretty fast. So that's my main, in terms of application, is what I really want to achieve.
That's great. And I think a lot of us will, now that we know that, you know, a lot of, if you didn't know that John was lurking in the Discord, you see him pop up, you know, but definitely we can ask some questions. And I'm happy Chad is here, happy to set up a section, you know, for here to record, so to make sure that people can actually have discussions about the software. So if you're able to, since you're already in the Discord, I think it's easy to kind of create a category.
Exactly.
There.
In fact, I have my own Discord server as well. So I'm in Discord like constantly. It's my main social network at this point. So do that and let me know in there if there's any bugs or problems, but over DM, if you have an idea for like a specific application you want to build and you just want me to like spec it out a little bit, it doesn't have to be that complicated. Or like your cool presentation next week, things like that. Just to make some cool stuff. Not everything has to be like a paid experience. I just want to mess around with this stuff now that I have time to do it anyway.
Yeah. Well, we'll put it in. One of the things I think that, you know, has moved Mokana, our little piece of software, forward so much is that there's a section there that people are talking to Chris all the time. You know, like hey, I really wish this button was here. I really wish this was here. And then there's a discussion. Sometimes people build on it. So yeah, so we'll get a category and a section up for stuff so people can, so that inside of our community, while it's there, people can just ask questions and stuff if you're going to be around. So that's great. So thanks so much for that. And thanks for joining us. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. And yeah, definitely really, really excited about what you're working on. So can't wait to see where it goes. I might start sending you a bunch of requests. It's always dangerous for me to go, oh, he's got time. He's got time, you know.
I am listening. Send them my way, definitely. Yeah.
You say that now. All right.
No.
Right.
For real.
Okay. All right. All right. Thanks so much. Thanks, John. And for everybody else, make sure to get your anaglyph glasses for tomorrow. If you don't, I think it's probably too late now. You probably won't be able to get them, but we'll still be talking about red and blue tomorrow. I see Mickey's ready. So anyway, so stay tuned for that. And we've been networking on Friday. Otherwise, we're going to jump into the post show. Thanks, John. Thanks everybody else.